Welcome to Flowcast. I'm Sister Sharon 𝐬𝐧𝐞. Today, our guests are Tony Rothering, who teaches biology at Lincoln Land Community College in Springfield, and Angelea Cook, a student who works with Tony at the Birdbanding site at Jubilee Farm. Next week marks the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si, Pope Francis's groundbreaking encyclical about the urgent need to care for Earth, our common home. In addition, this year, we celebrate a quarter century of caring for our common home here at Jubilee Farm. Among our many projects and programs, we have been so grateful to have Tony and his banding assistants, some of whom are his Lincoln Land students, operate a bird banding station at Jubilee Farm. We have the great privilege to watch them work every week during banding season. Today, I am pleased to be able to introduce Flowcast listeners to the important work they do. Welcome, Tony and Angelea.
Thanks for having us, Sister Sharon.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Well, let me begin with asking both of you, how does bird banding contribute to the urgent need to care for creation?
So bird banding is just one methodology that is used for studying some of the creatures that inhabit this planet, in this case, birds. And the folks who do bird banding are referred to as ornithologists or avian ecologists. And their studies that they do, which may involve bird banding, does give us a nice image, a picture of the health of bird populations that are seen in the areas where they perform their studies. But we also find that bird populations can give us an idea of the health of the entire community, the entire ecosystem in that area as well, as birds are often referred to as indicator species. So when we see any changes in bird populations, it could have bigger implications. That could be on a positive side, or unfortunately, it could be on a negative side. So birds truly are the canary in the coal mine, as they can give us an idea of the localized and even global impacts that we see on the local ecosystems and even very localized areas, such as at Jubilee Farm.
Yeah, like Tony said, bird banding can tell us so much, not only about bird populations, but insects. Maybe a certain bird species is no longer thriving here because the insect population is dwindling, or vegetation, maybe the habitat is changing and supports one species better than another now. So it contributes to our knowledge of entire ecosystems and helps our ability to help nourish these places that support all these beings we love. And I think it helps us see the interconnectedness of everything in this way, because we all have an impact on one another, and it's important to help influence that in a positive way. And I think the public can really see this, and their attention can be drawn to the fact that we are so connected. And I know personally, and some might share this sentiment, but I've adored all animals since I was a child. I felt a very deep concern for them, from bugs to squirrels to cows, you name it. But I didn't really realize how much closer they felt to me and how far away birds may have felt, because I could have a bug crawling up my arm or maybe pet a horse, but birds were more like, now you see it, now you don't. So bringing myself closer to them has really increased my appreciation for them and awareness of them in the environment. And I think it can help the whole public in that way when we have visitors seeing the operation, and can really open your eyes to the way that birds are influencing us and we're influencing them.
I'm gonna add something on that Angelea brought up that I think is really important too, and that understanding these bird populations, we then can look at, once we realize what's happening to them and the implications of our actions, we then can look at what we can do to conserve, to restore, and it's when we're doing this, when we're focusing on birds, we are really focusing on the entire ecosystem. We are, as Angelea said, we're concerned about the vegetation, the insects, the mammals, the reptiles. Everything can have a positive impact from these actions. And I love what Angelea said, because I hear this very frequently, that that a lot of creatures we can get our hands on, but birds, they're in the trees. I mean, we see them; they're at our feeders. But this experience of bird banding, allowing the birds to be seen up close, and to hold them in your hand, gives you a complete different perspective and appreciation for that small group of living creatures.
Yeah, I'd have to say that I've really seen that at Jubilee Farm. When the public comes, when visitors come, and you actually give them the opportunity to hold the bird and release the bird. And I've often watched people's faces when they do that. It's a mystical experience for them. It talk about what Angelea said about interconnections. We have to actually touch, hold, be up close to something to feel connected. And I think that's one of the gifts of having you all at Jubilee Farm, to allow our visitors to have that opportunity. Tony, something you said I want to go back to. So, banding birds and knowing which kinds of birds fly through Jubilee Farm or any of the other banding stations you have here in central Illinois. Have you noticed, now you've been doing this for a number of years now, right? Have you noticed a change in migratory patterns, or a change in the kinds of species that are actually coming, or that you don't see anymore, or new ones that you are seeing? What are your thoughts on that?
So I've been banding birds in some capacity for a little over 15 years, and mainly in central Illinois. And in unfortunately, a lot of what we do see is not positive. There are positives, but a lot of what we see is more concerning. And there was a very large study, a global study that was done on bird populations using many different data sets that have indicated since the early 1970s about 3 billion birds have been lost. And that's a lifetime. That's 50 plus years, and that's very concerning. And we definitely are seeing that locally with certain groups. A lot of them are migratory groups, birds not necessarily that are resident birds that are here year round, but they're traveling large distances, long distances. In some cases, most of them are neotropical migrants. They're going all the way to Central and South America for what we would think of as the winter months, and then coming back north for their breeding activities. And we're seeing just smaller numbers. It's just over the past week or two, we've commented at the banding station that we're just not seeing these the warblers, the flycatchers, etc. And so it is incredibly important when we have the opportunity to create or establish or restore or conserve quality habitat, that we do that. And it can be whatever. It's amazing, even in a suburban or urban backyard, if you have native vegetation and in a half acre even, it's amazing how the birds will find it. And not just birds, but insects show up that you haven't seen. Plants will pop up from the seed bank in the soils that you never realized were there. And it's amazing how these creatures will find it. And so that's why I'm so thrilled about areas in Springfield where or in Central Illinois where we see this. It could be preserves or parks that's monitored and maintained by the Department of Natural Resources. It could be more Audubon chapters like Adams Wildlife Sanctuary on the northeast side of town, or it could be Jubilee Farm and the 160 plus acres that are there that are important stopover points. So yes, we are seeing declines in birds, but that should just be a signal for us to be out there and conserving and restoring as much as we can, and to help the birds that are still around and help them propagate, help them to proliferate, and maybe they're never going to probably return to the population numbers they were, but hopefully they will still be present. And we have done our part in contributing to maintain those populations that do still exist.
Now we have almost 164 acres at Jubilee Farm. We've got a large pond, we've creek, trees, a lot of things that can attract birds, especially on their migratory flight. That's a very long flight for them, all the way from Central and South America up to Canada. And so we like to consider ourselves a sanctuary for them. But what are some kinds of things that people in their own homes can do to assist birds on their flights? You mentioned it can be in your own backyard. Are there things that people can do in their own backyards that would help these birds on their journey?
So probably the things that come to mind that most directly would help them is to provide the resources that they need. So that could be food, and yes, I mean it could be putting bird feeders out. Whether that's a typical seed feeder or maybe feeders for hummingbirds, etc. Or it's even more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, it would be providing the natural foods that they would be dependent on. And when you put in, as we've mentioned a little bit already, but when we put in that native vegetation, then you are encouraging natural food sources like insects, etc. So that's incredibly important. And then also doing the big picture things that may not necessarily reflect in your backyard, but it does help on the big picture. Using incorporating sustainable type of lifestyles. So therefore, trying to get away from one-time use plastics and trying to recycle as much as possible and utilizing less fossil fuels, walking more or biking, et cetera. Those things in the grand picture may not necessarily reflect in your backyard, but it really, really does help, not just birds, but the natural world as a whole. And then also very important is to support those organizations that are out there doing research, that are out there doing some of the hardcore work. They're going in the streams, they're cleaning them up, they're restoring prairies, or they're doing research like what we do with bird banding, et cetera. And there's many different types of support. Yeah, sure, it could be financial, monetary support, but it could be just like what Angelea does. and being physically there, coming out and participating, contributing, spreading the word, and letting other folks know what you do and why you do it, the passion that you have for it. Doing podcasts, exactly like what we're doing today. So that is incredibly important. There's so much individuals can do, and it doesn't necessarily always have to require a lot of financial resources to do that.
Mhm. Thank you. Angelea, what have been some of your most interesting or exciting experiences that you've had at Jubilee Farm?
Well, thanks to the more experienced extractors, I've been able to safely retrieve birds from our nets during our project. So, of course, anytime I'm able to do that is exhilarating for me to put the practice and observation into action and have a more direct impact. And really, anytime we're meeting a new bird is so exciting. We never know who we'll have the pleasure of meeting next. And they're all so unique. But I do love the anticipation when we know someone has a particularly interesting catch, and there's a gasp you hear from everyone when we get to see it. Like just last week, we had a northern Perula visit, which is a very pretty little blue and yellow type of warbler, and the crowd went wild. And it's just so exciting to see the look on everyone's faces for the banders and visitors alike, which is another of the most exciting and interesting parts for me, is seeing the reactions of visitors. And one of them was my mom, and that was one of my favorite memories there, is getting to see the delight wash over her face as she was holding and releasing these birds. She's definitely nurtured my appreciation for nature, and to share this project that I'm now involved in, much like a lot of little projects we've gotten into together, was like a whole new level of bliss and fulfillment. So there have been a lot of exciting moments. Another one in particular was one of the first times I was out at Jubilee. We were doing the saw-whet owl banding, where we go out at nighttime with the nets and call the owls with audio recording and try to study the saw-whet owl species. And although we didn't catch any while I was there, it was completely thrilling for me to be out at night with all these scientists and looking for the owls. And I did get to live the experience of seeing one through the pictures. So once they did catch an owl. But that was another really exciting experience for me.
Sometimes folks will say, you hear people say that a good day or a day of fishing is better than, even if it's a bad day of fishing, is better than any other day. Well, that's the way we feel about being out in nature and being with the birds. Even if we don't catch a saw-whet owl, the fact that we're with like-minded folks and kindred spirits and we're experiencing it is still better than just about anything else we could be doing. So I completely concur with Angelea on that point.
I have to say, of the many birds that I've seen pictures of or actually seen, the saw-whet has taken my heart. I actually have a picture of one of the ones that you all took on my phone so that I can see them regularly. Just beautiful, beautiful little creatures they are. Um, Tony, speak to us a little bit about the Motus Tower that you were able to get established at Jubilee Farm. Tell us what that is and how that contributes to the whole process of understanding migrations.
Sure. So it's the primary focus of our use of Motus is a species that Angelea mentioned, which is a northern saw-whet owl. It is an owl species that is migratory. Most of the owls that we have here in Central Illinois are not migratory, but this one is. And usually will nest in the coniferous forests in Canada in the northern tier of the continental 48 states. But we do get the pleasure of seeing them, hearing them during the wintertime as they're passing through, either going to a little bit southern climes, not necessarily the tropics. But Motus overall can be used for many, many species, not just birds. It's used for bats. It's used for insects like butterflies and dragonflies. And it even could be used for creatures that don't necessarily fly. So Motus is a wildlife tracking system. And it is a series of towers that are placed that have receivers. And the idea is that on the species in question that you're focusing on, depending on your research project, you would put a tag that has a radio transmitter on it. And the tags are placed on the organism differently based on the size of the organism. And the key thing is you don't want to impact them negatively in any way. So especially those that fly, to overweigh them or to prevent them from flying like they normally would. And so the ones that we put on saw-whet owls fit sort of like a backpack. And they're also they do emit a radio signal. It is a presence absence type of signal, so it doesn't like tell the health of the bird or the altitude at which it's flying or anything along those lines. It more or less just says if they're there or if they're not. And in order for a tower to pick up on these transmitters, they have to pass within roughly about 5 to 10 kilometers of a tower. So the idea is to put these towers up in a very regular pattern so that if an organism, let's say a saw-whet owl, has a tag and it's flying, that when it's flying north and south, as it typically would for migration, it will pass close enough to a tower to be counted as being present. So the idea with these towers is to create what we call a fence. And so when birds are flying or insects, etc., then they will hopefully hit, so to speak, not physically come in contact with, but come in close enough contact that they're picked up by one of these towers. So we work with a group of scientists at the U of I in Champaign, and they have many towers throughout Illinois and even down into Mexico, and to pick up on these different species that they're focusing on. Primary one being the saw-whet owl. And so we are situated along a fence that runs along the I-72 corridor. And so we're a nice little spot at Jubilee Farm in between different transmitting towers receiving towers that is just perfectly situated. So we were thrilled to be a part of this. We were fortunate enough to win some components of what was needed to have a Motus station at a bird banding meeting a couple years ago. And so working with the Dominican sisters, we got permission to put a tower up. We've had a few ups and downs, quite literally, with the tower, but it's in full operation now. And in fact, just recently, about a couple months ago now, I guess, it was early March this year, mid-March, I guess, we picked up a saw-whet owl that was banded in northwestern Arkansas. And so that's really exciting. And actually, it's the guy who banded it or assisted banding it is someone who I've banded with a few times. He used to live here locally. So that was exciting. And as Sister Sharon mentioned, we did, or alluded to, we did band a �𝐬𝐷 𝐷 last fall. And so we're interested to see, and not only band, but we did tag that owl. So we're interested to see where all that owl gets picked up, if it does get picked up. And obviously many of them don't. But we hope to contribute to that body of knowledge to help us better understand the life histories, the migration patterns of this particular species.
Okay, thank you. Angelea, have you had anything to do with the tower or anything you'd like to add to what Tony just was sharing?
I've mainly heard about the tower, and I've been rooting for our ability to pick something up. But yeah, there's been a lot of anticipation and excitement surrounding it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else we can pick up from it.
I know you can go, in fact, I've done it. I've gone on the MODIS website and have seen a map of where all of these towers are in the United States. And it's really amazing. I think it's just special that Jubilee Farm is one of the places where we have this tower established. So, not to be too pointed, but let me ask both of you, because you work again at other banding stations in the area, is there something special about Jubilee Farm that you'd like to share? Or what's unique maybe about Jubilee Farm that may not be true of the other banding stations you have?
I'm gonna let Angelea go first this time.
Definitely, to me, the llamas and alpacas stood out as soon as I got there. I was so excited. I know other students are too. And the chickens roaming around, and just the broad area, all of the different species, not only of birds, but trees and other plants and insects, neat little things we can find on the ground. Like I think we found a little praying mantis shell from from where their eggs hatched from just the other day. And yeah, it's a beautiful place where you would go to hike and take in nature in any way that you can. It's has a very wide array of species and nice energy. Also, the gardens there in the little greenhouse are something that stand out from other banding sites. Maybe all of the opportunities to educate the public on all sorts of different operations and ways that we can positively impact the well-being of everything we share our planet with.
So the organization that sponsors our banding activities in Central Illinois that I happen to be a part of, I'm the vice president of, it's called the Lincoln Land Association of Birdbanders. And as Sister Sharon mentioned, we do have a few other banding stations that we do operate in the Springfield area, one being at Lincoln Land Community College, where I also teach. And one thing that I will say about Jubilee Farm, actually, I mean, there's many things, and Angelea spoke well to this. But first off, the habitat quality at Jubilee Farm is really quite good. I mean, there's always room for improvement, but that's true of everything, right? And so we can always look forward, but it's very good as compared to the other locations where we band. And that is really a testament to the devotion, dedication of the Dominican sisters to conservation, restoration. So that's incredibly important. And so it's amazing the 11 nets that we have the number of birds that we capture as compared to other banding stations throughout Central Illinois, not just the one sponsored by our group, but in Decatur and in Champaign. It's always amazing to me to see the number and diversity of birds that we catch when we're using half to a third of the number of nets, and that speaks to the quality of the habitat, the facilities that we are able to use. It is also incredibly valuable. The hospitality is awesome, and also which Angelea spoke to, the access for public, for them to come, because that is a real important mission of our group of lab, is not just to better understand bird populations, but also to educate. We are educators, so we want the public to be able to access. We don't want to be behind a locked gate. We don't want to be in a closed property. We want to be able to share our knowledge, our love for not just birds, but for the natural world. So that has been incredibly important, and was just a no-brainer for us when you all were welcome to have us come. Then we definitely wanted to jump on that, to stay, to expand as you all see fit. So it's been a good fit for lab and hopefully for the Dominican Sisters.
Angelea and Tony, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you about the ways bird banding at Jubilee Farm contributes to the care of creation called for by Pope Francis, not only in Laudato Si, but in so many of his other written and spoken appeals. In addition to our work here at Jubilee Farm, we sisters are starting another project on the grounds of the Mother House. We are turning a 1.5-acre plot into a pollinator garden. If our listeners have any interest in that, they can learn how they can participate and help with that effort by visiting springfieldop.org/mission. My thanks to the Flowcast team, engineer Brandon Durham, social media coordinator Jean Ann Miller, and the producer, Sister Beth Murphy, for their help creating this episode of Flowcast, a podcast of the Dominican Sisters of Springfield, whose lives are given in service for the life of the world.